The galaxy had been peaceful for 3,000 years. 12 different species lived among the stars. They traded with each other. They argued sometimes. They built great cities on hundreds of thousands of worlds. Life was good, and most believed it would stay that way forever. Then they came. Nobody knew where they came from. They appeared at the edge of known space like a dark cloud rolling across a clear sky. The first reports called them ships, but that was wrong. They were alive. They were creatures of metal and flesh twisted together, standing 3 meters tall with black shells harder than steel. Their eyes could see heat and movement from miles away. Their claws could cut through armor like paper. They had hunted across the empty spaces between galaxies for longer than any civilization had existed. And they hunted for fun. They were the first to fall. They were a peaceful people, shaped like frogs but tall and graceful, with blue skin that shimmered in the light. When they appeared above their home world, the scent diplomats, they believed all thinking creatures could find common ground. They believed in peace. They skinned their diplomats alive. They broadcast the screaming across every communication channel in the galaxy. It lasted for 6 hours. Ambassador watched the transmission from her office on station. She was 42 years old, a human woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen terrible things. Earth had not always been peaceful. Humanity had spent most of its history at war with itself, had studied those wars. She had seen what her own species was capable of when pushed to the edge. The screaming finally stopped, did not look away. Captain stood beside her. He was tall and broad, a military man who had served in 3 different conflicts before joining the diplomatic corps. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "The assembly is meeting tomorrow," said. His voice was tight with anger. "They will talk about evacuation plans. They want to run to the edge of the galaxy. They are building hibernation vaults underground. Everyone is preparing to hide." "And what is humanity preparing?" asked quietly. "Command wants options, real options, not running, not hiding." Turned away from the dark screen. Through her window she could see the stars stretching out forever. Somewhere out there they were moving closer. They had taken 3 worlds in the past month. They were fast. They were hungry, and they were not going to stop. "Do you know what made humans survive?" she asked. "On Earth we were not the strongest animals, we were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. Tigers hunted us. Wolves hunted us. The night was full of things that wanted to eat us." Waited. He had heard stories about Earth's past, but had a way of making old history feel new and dangerous. "We survived because we refused to stay prey," continued. "We learned to hunt the hunters. We tracked tigers through jungles for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We surrounded wolves with fire and spears. We became the thing that other predators feared." She looked at with cold, steady eyes. "The galaxy has forgotten what predators really look like. They are about to remind them, but they have never met a species like us." The next day the Galactic Assembly gathered. Representatives from all 12 civilizations sat in a great circular chamber on station, an ancient place built by a species that had died out long ago. Fear filled the room like thick fog. Beings of light and crystal, of water and silicon, of scales and feathers, all of them were afraid. High Speaker of the stood at the center. He was tall and thin, with skin that glowed softly like moonlight. His voice was gentle but sad. "We must face the truth," said. "They cannot be stopped. Every fleet we have sent against them has been destroyed. Every world that tried to fight has been harvested. Our only hope is survival through distance. We must scatter. We must hide. We must wait for them to move on." Heads nodded throughout the chamber. Beings that had argued for centuries suddenly agreed. They were all prey now, and prey only had one instinct: run. Stood up. The chamber went silent. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only been traveling among the stars for about 100 years. Most species saw them as children, clever perhaps, but young and inexperienced. What could a species so new possibly have to say? "They are predators," said. Her voice was calm and clear. "They hunt because it is what they are. They expect their prey to run, to hide, to beg. Every species they have encountered has done exactly that, and every species has died." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humanity offers another option. We do not run, we do not hide, we hunt." Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. Ambassador of a being that looked like a pile of moving rocks, made a grinding sound of disbelief. "Hunt them, you are barely out of your cradle, your ships are slow, your weapons are primitive, you would be slaughtered." "Perhaps," said, "but we would take some of them with us, and the next humans would learn from our deaths, and they would take more, and eventually they would learn what every predator on Earth learned thousands of years ago." "And what is that?" asked. Smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of something dangerous, something that had crawled up from the mud and the blood and the darkness and refused to die. "That humans are not worth the trouble." She looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces, all the ancient species that had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what it meant to fight. "We will need ships," she said. "We will need soldiers. We will need everything you can give us. In return, we will teach them something they have never learned in 10,000 years of hunting across the stars." "What is that?" asked again. His eyes were hard as stone. "Fear." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, High Speaker nodded. "Show us," he said. "Show us what humans can do." Turned to Captain. He was already reaching for his communication device, ready to send the signal to Earth. The hunt was about to begin. 6 months passed after the assembly meeting. In that time that took 4 more worlds. Millions died. The galaxy watched and trembled. But humanity was preparing. The coalition fleet gathered in orbit around a dead world called IV. It had been a beautiful place once, home to a colony of settlers. Now it was ash and bone. They had used it as a hunting ground, chasing the survivors through ruined cities for sport. Nothing lived there anymore except ghosts and memories. Major stood on the bridge of the human carrier ship Dawn, looking down at the gray planet below. She was 35 years old, small but strong, with short black hair and scars on her hands from years of combat. She had grown up in the mountain regions of Korea, where winters were harsh and survival was never guaranteed. Later, she had fought in the border conflicts that nearly tore Earth apart. She knew what it meant to face something stronger than herself and win anyway. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Minyu, stood beside her. He was tall and quiet, with the kind of calm that came from growing up in the underwater cities of the Pacific Rim. He moved like water even in full combat armor, smooth and patient. He had been a rescue diver before joining the military, pulling survivors from wrecked ships in the deep ocean. He was used to working in darkness, in pressure, in places where death waited for any mistake. "The coalition ships are hanging back," Minyu observed. "They are afraid." Nodded. The cruisers and battleships floated at a safe distance, watching but not approaching. They had come because Ambassador had convinced them, but they did not really believe. They expected the humans to fail. They expected to watch another species die. "Let them watch," said. "They will learn." 200 human soldiers waited in the ship below. They were not the biggest or the strongest fighters in the galaxy. Their armor was not as advanced as technology. Their weapons were not as powerful as energy cannons. But they had something no other species possessed: 10,000 years of practice at being dangerous. Called her soldiers together before the drop. They gathered in the cargo bay, men and women from every nation on Earth, united now under a single purpose. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes, but fear was not the same as weakness. Fear could be fuel. "The will come," told them. Her voice echoed off the metal walls. "They always come when they smell prey. They have never lost a hunt. They have never faced anything that fought back with real intent." She held up her combat knife, a simple blade of steel that humans had been making for thousands of years. "Our ancestors invented this before they invented writing, before they had fire, before they had anything except will and hunger. They used tools like this to kill things with claws and fangs and strength that should have ended humanity before we began. She looked at each soldier in turn. We are not prey, we never were. The galaxy forgot what predators look like. Today we remind them. The drop ships fell through IV's atmosphere like burning stars. The soldiers hit the ground running, spreading out through the ruins of a city. Buildings that had once been beautiful lay broken and empty. The streets were scattered with bones. Set up her ambush points carefully. She had studied every recording of attacks that existed. She had watched how they moved, how they hunted, how they thought. They were confident. They were fast. They expected their prey to panic and run. She was counting on that. The hunting party arrived 3 days later. 40 of them, dropping from a massive organic ship that hung in the sky like a dark cloud. They were terrible to look at. Their bodies were twisted combinations of metal and flesh, with too many limbs and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. They made sounds as they moved, clicking and hissing, communicating in a language of hunger. They spread out through the city, expecting easy sport. They had done this 1,000 times before. Minu's squad hit them first. The ambush was perfect. Human soldiers opened fire from buildings that had assumed were empty. Plasma rifles, modified with targeting systems that human engineers had designed, struck the weak points in armor. The joints, the eye clusters, the soft tissue beneath the chin. Other species had been too afraid to study them closely. Humans had watched the recordings again and again, learning every weakness. 3 fell in the first 10 seconds. The others reacted with shock. This was not supposed to happen. Prey did not strike first. Prey did not aim for weakness. Prey ran and screamed and died. They scattered, trying to regain the advantage. Hunted best alone, stalking individual targets through darkness and fear. They vanished into the ruins, expecting to pick off the humans one by one. That was when trap closed. Humans did not just fight, they pursued. Teams of soldiers moved through the ruins with patient, relentless purpose. They did not rush. They did not panic. They tracked the hunters through dust and shadow, using technology and teamwork and something older than both. An instinct that whispered in the blood of every human who had ever lived. You are not alone in the darkness, but neither is your enemy. They began to fall, one after another. Some died in crossfire. Some died in close combat, pulled down by soldiers who refused to stop even when they were bleeding. Some died running, shot in the back as they tried to escape. Running, they were running. Minu found the last one hiding in a collapsed building. It was wounded, one leg shattered by plasma fire. It hissed at him as he approached, claws scraping against stone. Even injured, it was dangerous. Even dying, it wanted to kill. Minu raised his rifle. You hunted us, he said quietly. Now we hunt you. The shot echoed through the empty city. When the battle was over, 26 lay dead. The remaining 14 had fled into space, abandoning their hunting ground for the first time in recorded history. Stood among the bodies, breathing hard, blood dripping from a wound on her arm. Around her, human soldiers were checking on their wounded, helping each other stand. They had lost 12 of their own, 12 humans who would never go home, would remember their names forever. But they had one. In orbit, the coalition ships were silent. The End and all the others had watched everything. They had expected failure. They had expected to add humanity to the list of species destroyed by the. Instead, they had witnessed something impossible. Ambassador's voice came over the communication channel from station. She had been watching too. Well done, Major, she said. The galaxy is paying attention now. Looked up at the dark sky, where the ship was still visible, fleeing toward the stars. Good, she said. Let them watch. This is only the beginning. News of the victory at IV spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species heard the story. The had been beaten. The hunters had become the hunted. and humanity, the youngest and smallest civilization in the assembly, had done the impossible. For the first time in months, people felt something other than fear. They felt hope. The matriarch felt something different. She was old beyond counting, a massive creature that ruled from the heart of Prime. Her body was a mountain of chitin and metal, grown and shaped over thousands of years. She had led her species across galaxies, hunting everything that moved. She had never known defeat. She had never known fear. Now something cold moved in her ancient mind. It was small, like a tiny crack in a great stone wall, but it was there. Her advisors told her the defeat was meaningless. 40 hunters lost to primitive apes from a backwater world. It meant nothing. They were still strong. They were still supreme. The matriarch listened. She said nothing, but she began to watch the humans more carefully. 6 months after IV, humanity launched its offensive. Admiral commanded the expeditionary fleet. She was 63 years old, with white hair cut short and cybernetic eyes that glowed silver in low light. She had served in every major human conflict of the past 40 years. She had defended Luna during the corporate rebellion, when corporations with private armies tried to seize control of Earth's moon. She had negotiated the peace that followed, sitting across from enemies and finding common ground. She knew when to fight and when to talk. Right now it was time to fight. "We do not engage them directly," told her captains. They were gathered in the war room of the flagship, a converted colony ship called the Eternal. "Not yet. They are still stronger than us in open battle. We would lose too many ships, too many people." She activated the holographic display. It showed a map of controlled space, with hunting grounds and supply routes marked in red. "Instead, we make them bleed. We hit their hunting parties when they are vulnerable. We destroy their supply lines. We bomb their spawning grounds before new hunters can grow." She looked at each captain in turn. "We make them spend more to hunt us than they gain. We make us too expensive to kill." Dr. The Fleets had studied the for years. She was young, only 30, with thick glasses and nervous hands that never stopped moving. But her mind was sharp as a blade. "The psychology is built on dominance," she explained. "They are predators. Everything in their culture revolves around the hunt, the kill, the display of strength. They have never been prey. They do not know how to be prey." She paused. "If we can make them feel hunted, their entire social structure may collapse. They may turn on each other." Nodded. "Then we hunt them every day, every night. We give them no rest. We give them no peace. We show them what it feels like to be afraid." The campaign began. Human ships moved through space like ghosts. They struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They targeted hunting parties, killing warriors and freeing captive species. They destroyed food stores and breeding pools. They left messages burned into the hulls of wrecked ships, messages that said, "We are coming. We do not stop. We do not forget." They tried to respond. They sent larger hunting parties, but humans ambushed them with traps and crossfire. They guarded their supply routes, but humans found new angles of attack. They fortified their spawning grounds, but humans bombed them from orbit and disappeared before defense fleets could scramble. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were losing. Captain Minu led a special operations team deep into territory. His mission was to rescue prisoners from a hunting ship, beings from half a dozen species who had been captured for sport. The ship was massive, a living thing of metal and flesh, with corridors that pulsed like veins. Minu and his team cut through the outer hull and moved silently through the darkness. They found the prisoners in cages near the center of the ship, weak and starving but still alive. And others, all waiting to die. "We are here to take you home," Minu told them. "Can you walk?" A young female looked at him with eyes that had seen too much horror. "You are human," she whispered. "The hunters." Minu helped her to her feet. "Today we are rescuers, but yes, we hunt those who hunt others." The escape was not clean. Warriors discovered them before they reached the exit. Fighting erupted in the narrow corridors, close and brutal. Minyu lost 3 soldiers before they reached the extraction point, but they got the prisoners out, all of them. As the human ship pulled away, Minyu looked back at the vessel. It was burning now, flames spreading through its organic hull. It would die slowly, like a wounded animal. Good, he thought. Let them feel what their victims felt. Back on the Eternal, Admiral reviewed the reports. 18 months of constant warfare, hundreds of engagements, thousands of dead. The humans had lost ships and soldiers too, good people who would never see Earth again. The cost was heavy. But it was working. "They are pulling back," her intelligence officer reported. "They are consolidating their forces around their home system. They are afraid." Allowed herself a small smile. "Good, fear is the beginning, now we finish this." She opened a channel to Ambassador back on station. "We are ready," said. "They are weakened. Their morale is broken. If we strike now at their heart, we can end this war." His face was tired but determined. "The coalition is ready to support you. After what humanity has done, they believe. They will follow." Nodded, "Then tell them to prepare. We are going to prime." On the bridge, her crew worked in focused silence. They had fought for 18 months without rest. They had buried friends and comrades. They had given everything. Now they would give a little more. The final hunt was about to begin. Prime was a nightmare made real. The planet hung in space like a dark wound, surrounded by clouds of debris and the bones of dead ships. Its surface was black, covered in oceans of acid and continents of twisted organic structures. The cities were not built but grown, rising from the ground like tumors of metal and flesh. Lightning flickered constantly in the thick atmosphere, casting everything in flashes of sickly green light. This was where they had been born. This was where they had become the terrors of the galaxy. This was where they would make their final stand. The coalition fleet gathered at the edge of the system. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Battle cruisers hung beside dreadnoughts. Support ships carried supplies and medical teams. A dozen other species had sent whatever they could spare. And at the center of it all, the human expeditionary fleet waited like a spear point. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal, looking at the planet on her. Her silver eyes reflected the distant lightning. "All ships report ready," her first officer announced. "The coalition fleet is in position," another officer added. "They are waiting for our signal." Nodded slowly. She had fought many battles in her life. She had won some and lost others, but she had never faced anything like this. They had gathered everything they had left. Thousands of hunting ships, millions of warriors, the matriarch herself waiting in the central hive. It would be the bloodiest battle in human history. Many of her people would not survive. She accepted this truth like she accepted breathing. "Open a channel to all human ships," she ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Took a breath. She thought of Earth, blue and green and beautiful, spinning far away in the safe part of the galaxy. She thought of all the humans who had lived and died over thousands of years, fighting to survive, refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. She thought of her soldiers, her crews, her people. "This is Admiral," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "Today we end the war. Today we show the galaxy what humanity has always known. That the darkness is not stronger than the light, that fear can be conquered, that even the deadliest hunter can be hunted." She paused. "Some of us will not see tomorrow. Remember them, honor them, and make their sacrifice mean something. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every species that has ever been hunted. Today we finish what we started." She closed the channel and looked at her first officer. "Begin the attack." The battle was chaos. Human ships dove into the formation, weapons blazing. The coalition fleet followed, spreading out to engage enemy vessels across 1,000 kilometers of space. Explosions blossomed in the darkness like terrible flowers. Ships died on both sides, torn apart by weapons and collisions and the raw fury of desperate combat. Colonel led the ground assault. She had been promoted after IV, given command of all human ground forces. Now she stood in a dropship with 5,000 soldiers, descending through Prime's poisonous atmosphere toward the central hive. The ride was rough. Anti-aircraft fire ripped through the sky around them. Ships were hit and fell, burning, toward the black ground below. Watched the casualty reports scroll across her display and forced herself not to count the names. 30 seconds to landing zone, the pilot announced. Checked her weapon one last time. Beside her, Captain Minu was calm as always, his face a mask of quiet focus. Around them, soldiers prayed or cursed or sat in silence, each dealing with their fear in their own way. "Remember your training," said. "Remember why we are here. They took everything from millions of beings. Today we take it back." The ship hit the ground hard. The doors flew open. Acid rain fell from the sky, hissing against their armor. The air smelled like burning metal and something worse, something organic and wrong. They were in the heart of enemy territory. The central hive rose before them, a massive structure of bone and steel that reached toward the clouds. Warriors poured out of openings in its walls, thousands of them, screaming their hunting cries. Raised her rifle. "Forward," she shouted, "forward." The soldiers charged. The fighting was brutal and close, and humans crashed together in the acid rain, claws against blades, fangs against determination. Soldiers fell on both sides. The ground became slick with blood of different colors. The air filled with screams and gunfire and the terrible clicking sounds of communication. Minu fought its side, covering her flank as she pushed toward the hive entrance. A warrior lunged at him, claws reaching for his throat. He, smooth as water, and drove his blade into the joint of its neck. The creature fell. Another took its place. He killed that one too. "The entrance is ahead," shouted over the noise of battle. "We push through." They pushed. Meter by bloody meter, they forced their way into the hive. The corridors inside were dark and wet, the walls pulsing with organic life. It was like moving through the body of some massive beast. Attacked from every direction. Ambushes from side passages. Warriors dropping from ceiling openings. Traps that killed soldiers with poison gas or sudden floods of acid. Lost count of how many she killed. She lost count of how many of her own people fell. But they kept moving forward. The center of the hive was a massive chamber, bigger than any stadium on Earth, and in the middle of it sat the matriarch. She was enormous, 4 meters tall, her body a mountain of ancient chitin and grafted metal. She had grown and evolved over thousands of years, becoming something more than a single creature. Her eyes, dozens of them, glowed red in the darkness. Her voice, when she spoke, seemed to come from everywhere at once. "So," the matriarch said, "the little hunters have come to my home." Stepped forward, her armor was cracked, her rifle was nearly empty. Blood dripped from wounds she could not remember receiving. Behind her, what remained of her assault team spread out, weapons ready. "Your war is over," said. "Your fleets are burning, your warriors are dying. It is time to surrender." The matriarch made a sound that might have been laughter. "Surrender? The do not surrender. We have hunted across galaxies for 10,000 years. We have ended civilizations older than your entire species. You are nothing. You are insects." "Insects that killed your hunters," replied. "Insects that invaded your home. Insects that will kill you too if you do not stop." The matriarch's eyes burned brighter. "Then come, little insect, come and try." She moved faster than something so large should be able to move. Her claws swept toward like scythes, dove aside, feeling the air split above her head. She rolled, came up firing. Her shots struck the matriarch's armor but did not penetrate. "Fire," she shouted, "everyone fire." Her soldiers opened up with everything they had. Plasma bolts and explosive rounds hammered the matriarch from all directions. She roared in rage and pain, spinning to strike at her attackers. Warriors fell beneath her claws, but more kept firing. The matriarch was wounded now, dark fluid leaking from cracks in her shell. She was slowing, but she was still dangerous, still deadly. Minyu charged her from the side, blade in hand. She caught him with one massive limb, sending him flying across the chamber. He hit the wall hard and did not move. Minyu screamed. She ran toward the matriarch, not thinking anymore, only feeling. Rage and grief and something older, something from the deepest part of her human soul. The part that had faced tigers in the jungle and wolves in the snow and refused to die. She found a gap in the matriarch's armor, a place where damage from the battle had cracked the ancient shell. She shoved the barrel of her rifle into the crack and pulled the trigger. The matriarch screamed. It was a sound that shook the walls and cracked the floor. She thrashed, trying to reach, but her movements were weak now, failing. Stepped back and watched the greatest predator in the galaxy fall. The matriarch's eyes dimmed. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you not fear?" Looked at her with eyes that held no mercy and no hate, only a deep and ancient knowing. "Because we remember," she said. "We remember being hunted, and we remember deciding we would never be prey again." The matriarch's eyes went dark. It was over. The battle for Prime lasted 3 days after the matriarch fell. Without their leader, they lost their unity. Some fought to the death, refusing to accept defeat. Others turned on each other, old rivalries erupting into violence. Some simply stopped fighting, sitting motionless in their hives as if they had forgotten how to live without the hunt. The coalition forces moved through the planet systematically, clearing resistance and securing key locations. It was hard, bloody work. More soldiers died in those 3 days than in the previous month of fighting combined. But slowly, inevitably, the resistance crumbled. On the 4th day, silence fell over Prime. Colonel stood on the steps of the central hive, looking out at a world that had been the heart of terror for 10,000 years. The acid rain had stopped. The lightning still flickered in the distance, but it seemed weaker now, as if the planet itself was dying. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced. 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, burns on her back from a near miss with a plasma grenade, dozens of smaller wounds that would leave scars. She had refused to go to the medical ships until the fighting was truly over. Captain Minyu stood beside her. He had survived his collision with the wall, though he was bruised and battered. The medic said he was lucky to be alive. He said luck had nothing to do with it. "We did it," Minyu said quietly. His voice was rough from smoke and exhaustion. "We actually did it." Nodded. She wanted to feel triumphant, victorious. But mostly she just felt tired and empty and grateful to be breathing. "How many did we lose?" she asked. Minyu was silent for a moment. 1,700 in the ground assault, another 3,000 in the orbital battle. The coalition lost nearly twice that. Thousands of lives, thousands of families who would never be whole again. Closed her eyes and let the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She would carry those numbers forever. "It was worth it," she said finally. "It had to be worth it." "It was," Minyu agreed. "The galaxy is safe now, because of them, because of us." A shuttle descended from the sky and landed nearby. Ambassador stepped out, moving slowly. She looked older than she had 2 years ago when this all began. The war had aged her as it had aged everyone. Colonel said, "Captain, the Assembly wants to address the coalition. They asked me to bring you." Shook her head. "I should stay with my soldiers. There is still work to do here." "Your soldiers can spare you for a few hours," said gently. "The galaxy needs to see the people who made this possible. They need to see humanity." 3 hours later, and Minyu stood in the great chamber of station. The same room where had first proposed the impossible, where the galaxy had laughed at the idea of hunting the hunters. It felt like a lifetime ago. The chamber was full. Representatives from every species in the coalition sat in their designated areas, but the atmosphere was different now. Instead of fear, there was wonder. Instead of despair, there was gratitude. Beings that had never agreed on anything looked at the humans with something like awe. High Speaker of the stood at the center. His luminous skin glowed bright with emotion. 2 years ago, he began, this assembly was preparing to die. We were ready to scatter across the galaxy, to hide in the darkness and hope that would pass us by. We had given up. He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. Then humanity stood before us and offered another way. Not running, not hiding, fighting. He gestured toward and Minyu, and the other human soldiers who had been brought to the station. Many of us doubted. Many of us thought the humans were foolish, suicidal, doomed to fail. We were wrong. His voice grew stronger. Humanity did what no other species has ever done. They faced the deadliest predators in the galaxy and they did not flinch. They fought not just for themselves, but for all of us. They bled for worlds they had never seen and species they had barely met. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. A representative was weeping openly, tears streaming down her blue face. Today, continued, the Galactic Assembly formally recognizes humanity not as newcomers, not as children, but as equals. More than equals, as protectors, as the species that taught us all what courage truly means. He bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in culture. Around the chamber, other representatives did the same, each according to their own customs. It was a wave of gratitude, of acknowledgement, of something close to love. Stepped forward to respond. She moved slowly, carefully, feeling the weight of the moment. We did not fight because we wanted glory, she said. Her voice was soft but carried through the silent chamber. We did not fight because we are stronger or braver or better than any other species here. We fought because we understood something about that perhaps others could not. She looked around at the assembled beings, at faces and forms so different from her own, yet united now in this moment. We understood them because we used to be like them. Humanity spent most of its history as predators, hunting everything around us, including each other. We nearly destroyed our own world with our hunger and our violence. We know what it is to be the monster in the dark. She paused, letting that truth settle. But we also know what it is to change, to look at what we are and decide to be something better. They never made that choice. They stayed predators forever. They forgot that even the greatest hunter can be hunted. Eyes grew hard. We reminded them. She straightened, her voice growing stronger. The galaxy is safe now, but there will be other threats, other dangers, other monsters who look at the stars and see only prey. When that happens, humanity will stand ready, not as conquerors, not as masters, as partners, as protectors, as the species that remembers what it is to be afraid and chooses to face the fear anyway. She extended her hand toward High Speaker, that ancient human gesture of peace and friendship. We were alone on our world for a very long time, fighting each other, learning to survive. We made mistakes. We did terrible things, but we also learned. We grew. We became something more than the frightened creatures hiding from predators in the dark. Took her hand. His skin was cool and smooth, utterly alien, but his grip was firm and warm. Now we are not alone anymore, continued, and neither are any of you. The galaxy has faced its greatest fear and survived, together. That is something worth celebrating. That is something worth protecting. She looked back at and Minyu, at the soldiers who had given so much, at the humans who had changed everything. Let any monster that comes looking for easy prey find a galaxy full of hunters instead. The chamber erupted in something that transcended species, a sound of joy and relief and hope that echoed off the ancient walls. Beings of light and crystal embraced beings of flesh and bone. Old enemies stood together as new friends. The galaxy, broken and bleeding, and began to heal. Later that night, stood alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. She was thinking about the soldiers she had lost, the friends who had died in the acid rain of Prime, the humans who had given everything so that others could live. Minyu found her there, as he always seemed to. "The celebrations will go on for days," he said. "You should rest." Shook her head. "Not yet, I need to remember them first. Everyone we lost, they deserve to be remembered." Minyu nodded and stood beside her in comfortable silence. They watched the stars together, two humans among the vast and ancient cosmos. "Do you think there are more like the out there?" asked finally. "More hunters in the dark?" "Probably," Minyu said. "The universe is large. There is always something dangerous in the shadows." "Good," said quietly. A small, fierce smile crossed her face. "We will be ready." Above them, the stars burned bright and cold and eternal. And somewhere in those infinite depths, anything that hunted the darkness learned a new truth. Humanity was watching, humanity was waiting. And humanity was not afraid.